Good morning guys, welcome back to the channel. And it is a sort of sad day today because my 2005 2-litre Duratec family Focus that I've had for the last 13 years is going to the scrapyard. Now it's not all bad because I have already replaced the car with a much newer Focus ST line. And what I'm going to do in this video is compare the older car to the newer car because on paper they're not worlds apart. Performance figures are somewhat close. So this 2005 Ford Focus was reported to have 143 horsepower. I think it's about 1300 kilograms curb weight. That gave you a 0 to 60 time of about 8.9 seconds, but the 2-litre Duratec engine that wasn't actually built by Ford, was a collaboration between Mazda and Volvo, is reported to run at its maximum capacity 166 brake horsepower. Now I've always thought this car had a little bit more oomph than what it says on the tin. Now what I wanted to do was compare the older car to the newer car because now having driven both, they are a completely different driving experience. This old Focus is very much an analog car. You get in, you put your key in, you turn the ignition and you drive. Bells and whistles, it's got cruise control, a front and rear heated screen, and a radio, and that is about it. When you get into this car, there are no distractions or anything, you just you drive. The radio is an old school radio, it's no DAB, it's no, all the mixer stations, just very old school CD radio. Now the driving experience in this car is normally aspirated, and it doesn't really start pulling like a train until you hit 4,000 RPM. Now on the motorway, I am in 5th gear on a dual carriageway doing 70 miles an hour, and I'm currently sat at 3,000 RPM. Now in the new car, I've got 6 gears, and this seems like I really need to change gear, but it's just how the old car was set up. Now driving this old car, it's very stiff, and my missus summed it up really. She's never really liked driving this Focus because she finds it a difficult driving experience. The gear's going fine. In the morning, when the gearbox oil is just a little bit stiff, it can be a bit difficult to slot the gears. They go in, but you just have to be firm with the selection. It's a bit of a crying shame, guys, because this car's done 86,000 miles and this engine will last way beyond that. But unfortunately, the reason I'm getting rid of this car is rust and ingress of rust. This model was known for its rust problems, and really I should have done something about it years ago and ignored it, and I've sort of paid for it later down the line. Now this car is a very raw driving experience. There's no traction control. It does have a stability control on it, but everything is controlled really by your right foot, and it will spin up the wheels in first, it will chirp into second gear, and in this car it will, in the wet, wheel spin in third gear if you've made an aggressive pull away. Comfort wise, this car, the seats are like big armchairs. There's no real side support as such, there's no leg support, but unless you're really chucking it around, this car's always been a nice cruising car, it's a nice armchair car, but because it's normally aspirated, you have to work the engine and the gears to drive it. So there's two things that are inherently different to the newer car, and I'll mention more as we come to drive the new car, is the suspension and the brakes. It's certainly the brakes are a lot weaker on this car. I noticed that straight away as soon as I drove the other car. And the suspension, it's a lot softer in this older car. And it is a shame that I'm getting rid of this car, really, because it is a daily driver. I've used this car every day for the last 13 years. And as I say, the engine is still strong, the car is running well, and it's a shame to be parting ways with it. So here we are behind the wheel of the Focus ST line 150, now for 5-door edition, and it's a much nicer place to be than my old car. The seats really are more comfortable, even though my older 2-litre Focus had big plush armchair seats, like I used to call them. These are more sports seats, but they're not grippy sports seats. Your bum sort of sinks into the middle of them, and it's just a nice place to sit. Now, obviously, in this car, you've got a lot more information coming to you, but to be honest, the dashboard is fairly clean in this car. Now, at the minute, we're just running down the M42 motorway. I'm in 6th gear, and it's just a simple car to drive. Because this is turbocharged, it makes driving effortless. Obviously, if you're really going to gun it, you may have to drop a couple of gears, but I'm doing 70 miles an hour, and if I want to or need to put my foot down, there's absolutely no lag there, it just goes. Because this has got 6 gears, it's a lot different from my older cars. The older Focus only had 5 gears, and the amount of times I thought to myself, well, I'd be trying to change up a gear, but you didn't. In the old Focus, doing about 70 miles an hour, in 5th you were doing about 3,000 RPM. In this car, well, I'm doing 60 now, in 5th gear, just drop it into 6. We're just doing over 2,000 RPM at 65 miles an hour. So what is the inherent difference between this car and my older car? Well, the first thing, as I found on the test drive, the brakes. The brakes on this car are super sharp. You've only got to nudge them and you're almost going through the windscreen. As compared to my old car, that's an inherent difference. Obviously, because this car's turbocharged, it just gets up to an average speed around town 10 times quicker than my old car. That's the inherent difference between a normally aspirated and turbocharged. In my old car, it had a similar power figure. This is a bit quicker on the 0 to 60, but this, because it's turbocharged, all the torque is low down, it just gets up to speed without even trying, and that's where it trumps the older car. So with my old car on a longer journey, I would have needed to hook my TomTom sat-nav up. My older car, it was analog, it was very old school. It had cruise control, but that was it. When you're going on a long journey, in this car, I've got now DAB radio to listen to. I've got a complete navigation system built into the centre console. I even get directions and map updates on the digital display out in front of me. Driving this is just so much easier than my old car. This car's got voice control. I don't even have to be messing with the infotainment system. I can just give it commands to do. And the infotainment system, I'm on a journey going somewhere. At the minute, I'm updating the maps on this, Bit of a long process, but maybe I might show you later on another video how I've done that. Okay, so one of the biggest differences between this car and my old car is the suspension. The suspension on this vehicle is a hell of a lot stiffer than my old car, and it's actually made me realise how wallowy my Fiesta suspension is. From my old Focus, the Fiesta always felt like a mini go-kart, quite planted. When I drove the Fiesta after driving this, it was like it wallowed and it pitched and it rolled, and obviously you get used to whatever you're driving or got access to. And obviously this is the ST line, so the Focus ST sits slightly lower than this car does, and it's obviously going to be a little bit stiffer, but this is stiff but not harsh. It's not, for example, I went here to Ghia Yaris the other day, and immediately that was a lot stiffer than this. You can feel the difference, and riding over bumps, but it didn't knock your teeth out. This isn't supple, it isn't wallowy, it's fairly stiff, but it's unforgiving. It just makes everything a pleasurable journey, and I think this car sits about 10mm lower than the standard Focus. Don't quote me on that exactly, I can't quite remember. One minor side to the newer car, and it's something that I've noticed, even though the older car revved higher in 5th gear on motorway journeys and was noisier, I've noticed that although this car's quieter, the engine is almost silent. There's more road noise and more wind noise in this car. Because these wheels are 17 inch, you definitely get a lot more road noise being transmitted through to you. And the wind noise on this vehicle is definitely a little more than the other car. But maybe that's sometimes in this, because it's quieter, you're going slightly faster than you actually realise you are. So we're coming towards the end of the video. I've talked about the driving differences between the two cars, but I then realised I've not really talked about the inherent differences. First of all being no key. But one of the good things about this car is that it doesn't have keyless entry. And by the car I can't open it, so there's no chance of a relay attack. But getting into the vehicle, as I mentioned, there is no ignition, so it's got keyless start. I'll start up. If I clear the thing about the trip computer, another different thing is driving modes. Now in my old car, you get in, you turn the ignition and you would drive, but in this vehicle I've got normal, I've got eco and I've got sport. So the driving modes, there is an inherent difference. When you're in the eco mode, it at times can try and cut the car down to 2 cylinders to save fuel. But from my experience of driving the car, running it in sports mode is actually more economic on the fuel. If you've only ever used this car in normal mode, you would think there is no difference between normal and sports. But when you go to sports, like I say, it's almost like there's a solid reassurance pull from the turbo. There is an inherent difference. The throttle response and everything, the vehicle feels so much sharper. Okay, another massive difference from the other car, no handbrake. It's a button. And to be honest, it doesn't take a lot of getting used to. You get used to popping it up to put the handbrake on, pushing it down to take it off. If you go to pull away and you've not turned the handbrake off, it will auto turn it off for you. But I don't like doing that. You're putting resistance on the rear brakes by pulling it. I like to take it off. The worst thing, and this vehicle does have hill climb assist, but I've got it turned off because I've heard stories about smells like smoking clutch or brakes when you're using it if you get your pull away a bit misjudged. But getting that holding it on the clutch and taking the electronic handbrake off manually is definitely something I need to work on. Another big difference in the car is all the fancy radars, electronics and driver assist. When you got cruise control on, you can set this up to be a certain distance from a car in front. It will automatically adjust that speed. It has got lane assist, but I've turned that off. I don't want the car trying to drive itself for me. Something that has come on and has scared the hell out of me is the pre-collision assist warning, and I do think it's a little bit overactive. I've noticed it seems to happen if I've got a car parked in front of me, or a car in front of me, and I'm going to move out to overtake, and there's a car or something in its peripheral vision, it seems to go crazy and it does panic you, and if you don't take evasive action, it will pre-arm the brakes and get ready to do a full-on emergency stop for you, which is a little crazy. Another thing I want to mention, this car's got auto start stop, but luckily when you're using the sports mode, it doesn't cut in, because don't get me wrong, I know it can save fuel, but there's nothing more frustrating having the engine decide it's going to turn itself off just when you don't want it to. The only other thing I want to mention is that it is a little more busy in the speedo and infotainment area. When you get into this car, there is a lot more going on, and certainly a lot more distractions than you would in the older generation car. So now that I've got a car of interest on the channel, what are my future plans? Well, there's two things I wanted to mention. This car uses the 1.5 litre Ecoboost engine that is also in the Fiesta ST and now the Puma ST. So in its 150 brake horsepower configuration at the minute, I can easily take this somewhere like Mountoon, have a downpipe, air filter and a remap and get this just over 200 brake horsepower. So that's thoughts for the future. I've also, this car's got an issue with the paint. Whoever polished this car before I bought it done a really bad job with polishing mop, and I now have ghosting lines. You can't really see on a dull or rainy day, it doesn't show up, but if it's a bright sunny day and the light's shining in the right direction, you can see all the ghosting lines, the mopping. I might try and polish that out by hand myself, but it could be a case that I'm going to have to get paint correction, and that's not going to be cheap, but it's something I do want to get resolved. But I've got to say, guys, I did get the car reflected at a cheaper price because of that problem. Right guys, I'm going to wrap the video up here. Please comment down below if you own one of these vehicles, you've already remapped it, what your thoughts are, or anything that you could let me know about the vehicle. And definitely going to be doing more videos with this car. Did anyone say road trip? Definitely some future videos coming up. Thanks for watching, guys. As I say, I'm going to end it here. Peace out.